Today we want to talk about sales.
Conscious selling approach.
I have no clue what does it mean. Help!
Sales mindset. Mindset is an incredibly important.
Founders should sell everywhere, every time, and in every case.
The first people to sell in your business are you.
How to sell to corporate customers.
Focus on the right conversations with the right people. Qualify your ideal client or your ideal industry.
Building successful sales in a startup. Good day to everyone. This is InnMind channel with the best first-hand information for startup founders and tech entrepreneurs. And today we want to talk about sales. Sales is one of the most important topics in any business and of course in all startup businesses as well. And we invited an amazing guest who is one of the most knowledgeable people in this topic. Please meet Taran Hughes. Taran is a sales professional with more than 20 years of experience in sales. He's also founder of TCS Accelerator in Barcelona and co-founder at PitchSlap, a new initiative which is growing like hell, which helps startup founders to improve their sales and investment pitches. Hello, Taran.
Hello, Nelly, and thank you for such a very warm welcome.
Well, I just said, I think 30% of your real background and experience, because you're also the author of books and also public speaker, coach, trainer, consultant, etc., and entrepreneur yourself.
That's right. Yeah, I've managed to cram a little bit in the last few years, but it's all been part of the fun journey that I'm on.
Taran, can you please tell a little bit more about your focus in sales? Meaning, are they B2B or B2B, B2C sales or B2G, or it is generalist?
Sure, no problem. So my career in corporate sales has always been business to business. I've always focused on that domain, and that would typically, it was mostly new business hunting. So the sort of the raw end of sales, where you have to go out and you have to generate activity, you have to engage with new prospects through various techniques like cold calling and warm contacting, but predominantly new business. I've done some account management work as well in some of the larger organizations I've worked with. And through my experience working in Barcelona with a startup community, I've started to adapt a lot of what I do in sales to the market that works in B2B and B2C and B2B2C. It's a transitional approach for some companies, and I'm drawing on my experience from the corporate world and the fundamentals of sales, which is the psychology of sales, which is applicable to all mediums.
What I also like a lot in your case is that you're not just sales coach or teaching other people how to sell, but you started from your own sales career. You were a sales manager, then you were the head of the sales department, etc. So you have this hand-on attitude on how to sell. How it was? You closed sales just organically because you have talent, or you learned it? That's
a really good question, actually, and I think I've been asked this question before, whether or not some people are just naturally born salespeople. And there are two types of answer I've heard, and I'll give you my answer after that. But there's either the answer that you're born with what they call the gift of the gab, and an ability to speak and be persuasive in your approach, which I think is in part, to a degree, quite important from an enthusiasm perspective. But I also think there are people who understand the mindset and psychology of sales and how people's behaviors play a significant part in the sales process. So yeah, I've absolutely been hands-on through my career. I started in door-to-door selling internet services when they were first emerging in the market, and moved on to telephone, and obviously after that in direct engagement. And I think sales for me has been something I have always had an interest and passion in. My father was an entrepreneur, and I picked up that sales and entrepreneurial spirit from him. But it's not enough just to be naturally gifted. I think you need, like anything, like an athlete, and I actually speak about this in my book, that you have a raw talent that must be developed. You need to be coached, and you need to develop as you grow through your career in order to become the best version of the salesperson that you are. And by, humbly, I am not the best salesperson out there. There are many superior experts in the field, but what I've done is I've been able to follow some really good advice from mentors that have coached me over the years, and I've applied that to my own approach, and I've enjoyed what I consider a relative success in my career in that respect. And now it's for me to share that with other people.
I like how you say it, like you are passionate about sales and you love what you do, and it is even a dynasty in your family, in your case. I noticed that a lot of people, they have a little bit different approach, especially at the beginning. They're kind of hesitating to sell and find it to be a little bit not comfortable to say freely that they are salespeople or they are selling in their business. How do you think, why is it so?
Wow. That's a very big question, and I'll try and give you a concise answer without taking up the entire hour. But certainly in the startup community, a lot of people who decide to found businesses don't come from a traditional sales background. They often come from technical engineering, or they come from creative, and they recognize that there's a problem they want to solve, or they have a passion for a technology that they are committed to working within and developing, and that gets translated into a business. At some point, they have to recognize that being a founder means that you encompass all dimensions of that role, even if it's temporarily, before you recruit the specific talent that you need. And there's this resistance, as you've rightly articulated, to doing something that they probably have a subconscious judgment about. There is, I think, reasonable to say there is a sentiment that some people, some sales professionals, are at they have a bad reputation. They connotate certain images and ideas in people's minds. And I think that there is a part in us, in all of us, that resists identifying with that which we don't like. So at some level, if they've ever encountered a so-called slimy salesperson, it makes there a resistance underlying about being described as a salesperson, and therefore consequently engaging in sales activity. I mean, it's much bigger than that, and I could talk for a long time. But in essence, I think there is this mindset approach that people. So that's the biggest issue. The other part is some people are just uncomfortable about presenting something in a way that they want people to acknowledge, accept, and then exchange for money. There's an underlying wealth or self-value issue for some people. Again, a big topic to unpack, and maybe a topic for another day.
Yeah, it seems so. Indeed, the topic about sales is like continuous, and unfortunately, we can't have endless interview. But I will try to ask the majority of most important or most widely asked questions, which we receive regularly from startup founders. But I see on your background the logo TCS. It is your Startup Sales Accelerator in Europe, in Barcelona. Can you a little bit elaborate on this? What is TCS about? And is it a real accelerator, or is it a kind of training program?
Sure, thank you. So TCS stands for The Conscious Sale, which is the name of my book. And it emanated from my time in an entrepreneurial business community. And I was inspired after being exposed to a group of incredible entrepreneurs from all around the world that all maintained a mindset around mindfulness and spirituality in what they were doing in business. It inspired me to write this book because I believe that there is a demand, or is a need for a more conscious selling approach. And from that book, I started writing it in the UK, moved to Spain to finish writing it. And during that time, I started to engage with people in the startup community just by coincidence, so-called coincidence. And from there, I started talking about business informally over coffee. And then it was a little bit more formal, and would I put on a little talk? And then before I knew it, I was actually running live events for people to come and listen to me speak about sales mindset. And then it became a little bit more broad about my sales experience as well, how to actually create sales strategy. What are some of the fundamental pitfalls, mistakes you can avoid when starting out in business? Because that's an incredibly important dimension for any would-be founder to recognize before they make the mistake so that they can sidestep it. And now what it's become is a program for entrepreneurs and founders to participate in with me in a one-to-one fashion that takes them through the key components of building and executing a sales strategy from wherever they are in their sales journey within their business. So no, I'm not an accelerator. I'm not putting money into people's businesses, but I am accelerating their commercial development. And I advertise to say that I accelerate you getting on board your first clients or your new clients and making sales a sustainable and recurring process in your business. And to be honest, sales is quite formulaic. Once you understand those mechanisms that you need to address, you don't need to be a natural salesperson to do it. But what you can do is you can take away a huge amount of the uncertainty that often creates mental noise, that self-doubt voice in your head that undermines our effectiveness. So ironically, what I often encounter is most people come to me wanting to work on what I call the structural side of sales, that development of a process, understanding how to create a value proposition, how to progress an opportunity through the constituent stages, etc. And I always say, well, mindset is an incredibly important thing. And they say, yeah, we get that, but we want to focus on the other part first. I'm like, sure, no problem. And then within a few weeks of working together, they recognize that I start to introduce how mindset influences their experience and how it changes how they interact with the world. They go, hey, you know what? Let's do some of that mindset stuff. And then I surprise them by saying, we've already started, you just didn't realize. And the fact that you're having this conversation now is a reflection of the awareness you're now getting about your internal thoughts and how they play out in the real world.
Oh my God, this is so true that I have even nothing to add. I was observing the same evolution of mindset on myself, on our team at InnMind, and also in a lot of founders on InnMind platform. When they come to us, for example, with illusions that once they fundraise, they will hire a salesperson and he or she will do everything and founders don't have to sell. And then they found out that the successful founders, they are selling first of all at the early stage and not are some employees or hired people. Founders should sell everywhere, every time and in every case.
Absolutely. I was engaging on LinkedIn with a good friend of mine from Canada who posed this question. And he said, you know, the first people to sell in your business are you, because you understand the problem that you've identified. No one has done the due diligence and the exploration and the validation like you have to know that marketplace, so that when you speak to a client, the thing is here, right, that is that you don't want to sell. The thing is you want to explain in such simple terms the value you represent that it becomes almost a case of, well, I've identified your problem is costing your business 100,000 euros a year. My solution is 20,000. Who wouldn't take that solution? Who wouldn't? Because it's saving you 80. So when you frame it in a way that it becomes an overwhelming, obvious decision to make, you don't sell anything. And the reason why you can do that as a founder is because you unwaveringly believe in what you're doing and you wholeheartedly understand the problem, or you should understand the problem you're solving. And compare that to when you hire someone that doesn't have the same emotional buy-in, doesn't have the skin in the game, i.e. that this has got to work because I'm investing myself, my time, my money, my reputation in this particular project. No one's ever going to stand up to the dedication you as a founder can invest in your business. And I'm not saying for a minute that you should never employ, but you should establish that ultimate credibility so that when you stand and tell an employee how to do it, you're not talking hypothetically. You've cut your teeth on it and you understand it.
Yeah, completely true. And also here we come to another problem, which we see in every second case in growing startups. When the founders have already learned how to sell and do it quite successfully, and they have already revenues and growing audience of clients. And then at one point of time, they needed to hire a salesperson in order to scale up, or even sales team. And then there is a problem how to put the information extracted from the head of startup founder to the head of salesperson. And here we come to some problems that it is really challenging. Do you have some tips, some advice on that?
There's a balance in sales and sales activity when you're starting out. There is this idea that you should establish some good practices, some baseline fundamental practices, like writing stuff down and working to a common process that is communicable to anybody that comes on board, versus getting out there and selling. So the activity is kind of the most important, but not losing sight of the fact that at some point you're recognizing that you're going to hand over the reins or share the load or the responsibility with the salesperson. Now, what you want them to do is be a miniature version of you with the same perspective, same way of engagement, and same way of reporting. So I always say, start with working out your sales cycle. Work out all the component steps required in order to take an opportunity from the first engagement to the signed contract and the opening of the relationship. Now, I'm talking about business to business here, yeah? Because when you do that, you can then communicate that without any ambiguity. It's very easy to say, these are the steps you must follow, and this is what each step translates to in what must have happened in order for us to progress. And that's 10%, 20%, 30% going on to 100%. So that's your baseline, and that should reflect the number of steps in the relationship process when you talk to a client. Once you've got that, it's a lot easier to communicate the thoughts and ideas to somebody else because it's written down, it's recorded. Yeah?
Sounds logically, but I guess that majority of people don't do it.
No, they don't, because it seems there's this idea that everything is organic, and people, when they're engaged in a sales situation, people work in their own particular way, customers work. If you actually honestly analyze it, you can identify key milestones in every sales engagement. And you use those key milestones to frame a set of activities. So really what we're doing is we're being analytical, we're being critical of the process we go through. And once you've engaged with 3 or 4 clients, you get to see that process. And the more you engage with, the more you refine it. That's the baseline. Once you get better at this, you start to work out how you can remove some of the steps to make it a shorter process. But in terms of communicating what's in here to the next person, document it in simple steps. Have them mirror. Yeah, always show by example. Lead from the front. So whenever I was in a sales situation, or rather, sorry, when I was coaching people in companies, when I was building sales teams, I didn't ask them to do anything that I couldn't demonstrate myself. From making telephone calls to leading meetings to closing opportunities in terms of that negotiation conversation. And I think it's incredibly important because it does 2 things. It not only gives confidence and shows the step through to the person that's following you, but it creates a sense of belief in the person that's following you, that it is possible, and that the person that's telling you actually knows how to do it. Because I think many of us can recount experiences where managers have said, do this, do that, and we don't fully believe that they have the capacity to do it themselves. And admittedly, some managers don't have that core skill. Their skill is to manage. But I think in an entrepreneurial environment, it's important that you know how to sell.
Mm-hmm. And when you speak about the teams and this procedure on how to build the sales team and extract knowledge from founders' heads, yeah. Do you also help in your TCS Accelerator to make the structure and to build the sales team in the startup?
Absolutely. When we break it down into constituent parts, we recognize that it's a bit like McDonald's. If you go into McDonald's, you see the guy on the counter or the girl on the counter taking the order. No, but it's true. You have someone taking the order, you have someone doing the stocking of the grills, someone putting the burgers together. It's formulaic, it's industrialized, it's systemized, and it's replicated. And we can do the same for sales. We can see the different components. There is outreach, there's the intelligence gathering, right? Someone can look for the ideal client profile. Someone can do outreach, someone can do meetings and calls. and depending on, let's say, for example, you've got a startup and you say, right, I want to build a sales team. I say, right, you need to be doing all the meetings, you need to be doing all the main calls, but we can get your salesperson, your SDR, to come in and do all the prospecting, looking for the right person and reaching out and under your name to create an event like a call or a meeting. Yeah. So they can start doing the elementary stuff whilst they feed you into the more valuable stuff. Because when your time is valuable, when your time is limited, you want to be economical with it and maximize what you get from it. So having someone do the elementary preliminary work that is valuable to them and part of their education, but more important for you to focus on just doing sales engagement meetings, the good stuff in terms of generating relationships and hopefully sales, then that's a step. And as you grow in organizational size, you start to add the number of steps, or you give more responsibility to the individual, to the point when you bring the next person in, then they teach that person. Because if you want to learn something fully, learn how to teach someone else. Because if you can't explain it to somebody, you don't understand it. So that whole process of getting your SDR to then train their replacement because they're moving up is a perfect way of ensuring they truly know how to do it.
Amazing. And just finalizing about TCS, because I'm sure that this is a topic for the separate interview. So many questions we have about that, but many founders would be interesting who are watching this video, maybe to get into this acceleration program. Do you have any special requirements or limitations on the stage or etc.? What is the application process?
So it's a business, yeah. So I will work with anybody that is ready to take that step in developing their business. But for me to deliver maximum value, I would prefer to work with people that are about to launch their sales activity or have already launched. If they are at the napkin stage, if they're at very early stages, yes, of course, they can work with me, but it wouldn't be cost effective for them and it wouldn't be representative of the value that I could deliver, because there would be too many other things that would need to be established. I would be asking questions that they may not be able to answer. But if you are close to launching a sales activity, or you've already launched, then get in touch with me through my website or through LinkedIn, theconsciousale.com or Taran Hughes at LinkedIn. I'd be happy to have an exploratory conversation with anybody about that and see how that we could work together. But if I may just add one more thing, because you mentioned a little bit before about the pitfalls in sales, and I would like to just say these 2 points. The number one cause of startup failure is no big secret, but I'll repeat it because it seems to get forgotten quickly. But there is no market need. So they create a business that they're passionate about. And I think I told you a story in our last meeting about the entrepreneur I met in Barcelona. And there is this idea that they're building something they're passionate about and they don't validate it. So my message to anybody watching this is really, when you do your validation, make it statistically relevant. Don't talk to 10 people or 30 people, talk to 100 plus people, and not just people, your ideal client profile, because it's there that you get the deep insight of the business, the problem, and that is how you start to build a value proposition. And the second point I wanted to share with you is this idea that the second reason that people fail business-wise in startups is because they run out of money. They run out of money, and there's only 2 ways to get money. Well, 2 legal ways, should I say. And the first one is to bootstrap and raise investment, yeah? And the second way is to actually start selling, to start transacting with your ideal client. Now, when people say, when is the best time to start selling? And if they come to me as a startup founder, I typically say yesterday. But in the absence of yesterday, it's today, because you can always start the sales engagement process. Even if you aren't ready to transact, you can start warming the market. You can start prospecting, start engaging, because some of these things take time. Some of the sales processes, some of the longest sales processes I ever worked on as a salesperson were 18 months. Yeah? You're talking about multi-million-pound deals. It doesn't get done in 3 months. So don't leave it till tomorrow.
Taran, do you have telepathic skills? You are just answering the questions I did not yet even ask.
Well, I think it's just a reflection of the great meeting we're having.
Yes, that's amazing. And both points fully agree. I think that those who are watching us right now, they are just getting crazy excited about how to fill correctly these major pain points. Two of them, building something no one needs in reality, and second one is getting running out of cash. But you also touched this very important topic, when the sales should start. And that leads me also to a set of questions I prepared, because we receive in chats, in social media, in different channels, a lot of questions about sales. And one of them is about ethics. So I will explain. Very often, startups don't yet have a product or a working prototype. And there is a saying like, fake it until you make it. Everyone understands it different, but in general, it means that you should pretend that you have something in some cases in order to win the market, the game. And here we come to some ethical question. What is more important, to sell to people, close the deal, get money, understanding that you will be not able to deliver the value right away as you described it, because the product is not ready yet, or not to do it and just postpone the sales?
Wow, that's a big question, and
Philosophical.
I think for me, I've been very fortunate that I had a great upbringing. My father taught me the value of work ethic and the importance of honesty, and I've been very, very fortunate to work for some really great people over my years in sales and in industry, and they've all rubbed off in their own way. And from that, I've taken a holistic view that you should always sell with integrity. Yeah, because your reputation it takes a lifetime to build, and it can be lost in a few moments. And whilst that being said, there is a need to sell. I think if you approach this in the right way, I think you can limit or mitigate the risk of losing your reputation and poorly delivering and letting people down. And I think what that really involves is it's really understanding the client in the first point, and then approaching people with a view that don't try and offer too much, right? Keep it simple and grow from there. If you try and focus on one thing, you're more likely to deliver the one thing well than to try and deliver a moving machine of moving parts. So with huge amounts of engagement and understanding, you're probably going to find that you can deliver the one thing really well. Focus on that, get that nailed, and then grow organically. I'm not telling people not to do their approach. It's not my approach. And I can't speak for other people, but I believe that you gain more credibility by admitting what you can't deliver as much as what you can deliver, especially in a sales situation that you may not necessarily close that deal in that moment, but you may end up meeting that client a year down the road or 5 years down the road, and the deal value is 100 times bigger, and they will remember the honesty and the integrity. Maybe they won't, but for me, I kind of believe that everything is connected, and I think that what you live by is reflected back to you in your experience. So if you live that life of not deception, but misleading to a degree, I think you'll encounter that in your own way. It's reflected back to you. So my position is always act and sell with integrity. Focus on the one thing you can deliver really well, and then grow from there. I don't know if that really answers your question, but I think that's the best I can offer you.
Yeah, you pretty answered it actually, and I respect a lot these kind of answers. Because yeah, it's funny to say fake it until we make it, and actually in some cases it can be relevant, because you in marketing, sometimes in some other aspects, but when you sell, it is always better over deliver than not
under promise.
Under promise, yes, exactly. So we also learned it by experience. And by the way, speaking about experience, one of the questions I had in mind is, You have such a huge, that's impressive, 20 years of experience. It's so many different roles, but everything around sales.
Yeah.
I'm sure you learned a lot yourself, but was it something there which surprised you and made you like, wow, I thought that it is other way around all my life, but now I understand that this is this way about sales?
I think I never really understood or didn't appreciate the degree in which psychology plays in the sales role, in the sales environment, and in the buying experience. I guess when I was in early to midway through my career, I had this tentative sense, a feeling that it's how people make decisions, and understanding what people's responses are going to be allows you to prime them with the right questions. And I think that came from understanding certain sales techniques. I am a huge advocate of question-based selling or qualification selling, where you ask the right questions, and whether they're open questions or closed questions, in order to navigate through a sale. But I think in the last 7, 8 years, 9 years, I really started to understand how deep psychology goes into how we make decisions, not necessarily in sales, but just as beings that we are, and how automatic our decision making actually is, and how little we are in control of our decisions. And it upsets a lot of people to think that actually what we describe as our executive consciousness, that thin part of our awareness that makes our decisions in terms of, well, I think I'll do this, I'm going to eat that, I'm going to go here, what we can hear, what we can see, what we can sense with our faculties, that accounts for such a tiny amount of our cognitive function. And most, if not all, 95% in fact of our decision making is made inside. And there are it resolves down to some really fundamental decision making processes. And once you understand those, you can understand, this is what the marketeers do so very well, and the advertisers do very well. They recognize our primal motivations, our need for, in terms of, the Maslow pyramid, the need for shelter, the need for a company, the need for sustainable life and experience. So when you understand those primary motivations, and you know how to stimulate them, you can then recognize how to create demand in people, how to create an emotional response. And what was really interesting, I've been reading recently about how emotion and the senses stimulate stronger encoding of memories. So I'm exploring now how to create a pitch program that helps people create emotion in the audience, because if you can trigger emotion, they're more likely to remember you in long-term memory. Because the way that the memory forms, we have short-term and long-term memory branches, and in our procedural memory, which is our long-term, it's responsible for all the things that we learn to do automatically. And I think if we understand how to trigger emotion like laughter, fear, uncertainty, all these things that are core from two primaries, we have a stronger chance of actually creating a lasting memory with the audience, which is really what we want. We want them to remember us.
That is an interesting concept. It reminds me this very usual advice to speakers, like if you want to make bright speech, start with an anecdote or some joke in order to get attention.
Precisely, it's a story. And I've actually got an interview with an actor. I've lined up an interview with an actor to get into this, because I want to understand how actors invoke emotion in their audiences more clearly. And if you think about historically, from the beginning of our history as a species, we've communicated things through painting, through art, and it's that storytelling, that narrative that has bound us together, which is why in the pitch, in the current evolution of pitching in business, there is an overarching story to take the audience on a journey. And it's so incredibly important that we understand how that works, because you can read one story and it doesn't move you at all. And you can read another book, just words on a page, and it brings you to tears. Now, I don't want to make the audience cry, but I want to understand the mechanism that triggers, so that I can help my clients actually use that understanding to their optimum, even if it's just to make people laugh at the right time, even if it's just to make them feel a sense of fear about missing out on an opportunity. I want to be able to hijack those senses in order to make their pitch the most compelling they can.
Is it within TCS or PitchSlap you are bringing?
This is TCS, but it will probably end up in both because it's relevant for both.
It will probably end up also in the next book.
Well, yeah, that may well be the case, actually. Yeah.
By the way, do you have your book in Amazon?
It is indeed. It is on Amazon. It's on Amazon UK, ES, etc. And it's called The Conscious Sale: The Power of State, Intention, and Belief: A Guide to Sales Success. I didn't choose a short title.
It is difficult to remember the title. We will put it in the link.
On the bottom, yeah, I know. I didn't choose a short name.
Yeah, true. But then people will definitely remember that it is a long title, maybe not remember exactly.
The easy one is just to remember The Conscious Sale. That's the name of the book, and the rest is a subtitle. So if you search for The Conscious Sale, it'll come up with no trouble.
We make these videos in order to dilute geographical and administrative borders and to help you get closer to international investors, venture capitalists, market experts, and startup hubs, irrespective of what country or part of the world you are based in. And we need your support. If you like this video, please don't forget to put like button, to subscribe to our channel, and if you find it useful, I will appreciate if you share it with your teammates, co-founders, or social media networks. Thank you, and see you in the next videos.
So at the last point you mentioned about this sales qualification or leader qualification moment. And that's funny because just yesterday we received an email from startup founder, the member of our pro group, and he was asking, guys, help me. My CMO said that we have to qualify leads. I have no clue what does it mean. Help. So can you please elaborate a little bit more what is a sales qualification, and do small startup teams which have already sales process and first sales need this qualification?
I'd be happy to. In fact, it's something I'm very passionate about because it's been I was once asked, what's been the biggest contributor to your success in your sales career? And I didn't need to think about that for very long. It's definitely been qualification. And qualification is something that we all do. You know, everybody does it, but we don't know what it's called. Qualification. It's simply making the correct decision based on the information we have. Okay, and in the context of sales, it's about asking questions to understand where your opportunity, the person you're speaking to, or their company, or the situation currently is in relation to the offering that you have and that you're putting towards them. So the broadest aspect of qualification is this potential person, is this person the right customer for me? Yeah. So when we qualify, we say, well, we'll look at the simplest metrics. My ideal customer has to have more than 10 employees, has to have more turnover than 100,000, has to be in this country, has to work in this industry, right? Maybe 3 or 4, 5 things. And then instantly you can dismiss 95% of the market, right? You've qualified them out and you've qualified these ones in, right? So now we've got more of a target. So when we talk about qualification of an opportunity, then we start to look at the individual companies and we say, okay, well, I believe based on my knowledge of your company, you're likely to have this experience, this situation, or this problem. And I'd love to come and talk to you about it. And they say, yeah, okay, we do. And you can. And then you start to talk to them about their specifics, because at this moment, they're potential opportunity. It's not a qualified one, because to be qualified, we were looking for probably 4, maybe 5 things. We're looking for a decision maker or access to a decision maker in line of sight, i.e., it's not me, it's my boss, or it's me. Yeah. We're looking for need. Yes, they agree with me that the problem or situation that I've discussed and articulated exists in their company, and they recognize it to be of equal significance, i.e., you've got a big problem, right? And if you don't fix it, you're going to run out of money, you're going to go bankrupt, or someone's going to eat your lunch. Yes, I agree. Okay, another tick. Then it's a case of time scale. Okay, well, do you recognize that this problem exists? And I know you're the person responsible potentially for fixing this. Is it in your view of the landscape, view of your calendar? Is this something you want to work on now in the next 3 months, 6 months, or 12 months? Because if it's 12 months, I'll come back in 6. We'll stay in touch between them, but we're not ready to start that process. But if they say, no, it's actually something that, wow, I need to sort out today, the time scale is suddenly in alignment too. So we have a time scale, we have a decision maker, and we have a need. And then the final component is budget, and budget is, well, yeah, absolutely. We need it. I'm the right person and I'm going to do it now, but I've got no money. Well, that doesn't work, right? So we have to, and this is I'm being very, very blunt here, but we have to be more delicate. But is that budget something that's available today? Is that budget going to be available in the next 3 to 6 months? Or is it going to be for next financial year? And if so, who's responsible? And then once we get those, each of these things splinters into sub questions. Okay, if the budget is available, who's actually responsible for allocating it if you're not going to sign that off? If you are the decision maker, do you hold the budget? And if it's a complex opportunity, if what I'm selling to you is a big deal for your business, maybe there's more people involved in the decision making. Who are they? What do they represent? So we're now asking questions in order to understand, make sure that our understanding of the business and the opportunity is where we believe we are on that time scale, that chart of steps that I told you about at the beginning, that 0 to 100. And that sales process now correlates to the sales questioning, because in the first step, we want to find out the preliminary information. If we do not get that information in the positive, we don't move on. We qualify it out and we move on to another prospect. Because if we don't do that, we can spend too much energy, resources, time, money, etc., on an opportunity that will never develop into a sale or into a relationship. Or if it does, it will take a disproportionate amount of resources to bring a inadequate response in terms of contract value or relationship. Does that make sense?
From one side, yes, definitely it makes sense. From another side, to be honest, I still have these questions in mind, like in a startup where you have really small team, for example, and not a big sales department. Is it so important to make this lead qualification in such a deep way?
Yes, 100%. I'll tell you why. Because if there's only one of you, 1 hour spent talking to the wrong person is an hour lost. And if you put a value on your time, let's say one of the questions I ask everybody I work with, I say, what is your worth? What if I wanted to hire you as a business, what would you charge me for an hour of your time? That's a difficult question for a lot of people because they don't like to quantify their value. They either feel that they're overvalued or they don't value themselves enough. But imagine this, you're going to speak to 5 people and 4 of them are going to be a waste of time, and you're losing 100 euros an hour. Are you going to really want to talk to 4 people? And that's what you're losing when you're wasting time by not engaging with the right audience. So by qualifying as early as possible the viability of the opportunity, because not everybody is going to be your ideal client, but in the early stages, there's this fear of loss. I don't want to let go of something. I've got a potential customer. I'm going to make sure I close it, which is fine if that's what you want to do. But if we're talking about working smart, if we ask the right questions, we either allocate the resources today and work on it. We either say, no, it's not for us, or we say, I'll come back to you in a month or 2 months' time. It's just more efficiency, and it actually allows you to move through the process smoother. And here's the great thing. I can hand over the reins to you midway, and you know where I am, and you know how to carry on without trying to play catch up, because we're working to a common plan. And that means when the sales guys have taken over from the founder to do the selling, they all use the same language, they all do the same kind of questioning, so they all know where they're going to be. It's so important to do it from day one. It doesn't need to be time consuming, but it needs to be part of the engagement process.
So actually, to make this qualification, you still need to talk to the person, ask him
for sure.
questions.
Qualification only happens with the client. Once you've decided if they're in or out, it only happens with the client for sure.
My God, that's crazy interesting. Guys who are watching us right now, please keep this in mind, because Taran really turned upside down my opinion regarding lead qualification, and made me believe that this is super important topic for startup founders. So if you don't know how to do it, either contact Taran, we will put all the links in the description, or download his book and read there some milestones, advice, etc. Or stay tuned to listen to our webinar with Taran, where you will be able to ask him questions directly during online webinar in a few weeks. Taran, speaking, turning from qualification to the communication with potential clients, always it is difficult to understand when you can start talking about numbers. And this is also the question which we always are asked by founders. Is it correct or ethical to make some pricing after the first call or name some numbers? Or is it better first to establish some relationship and only then to go to the point?
Okay, great question. It comes up a lot actually, so it doesn't surprise me. In part, it depends what kind of business you have. If you have a B2C business where you're online, most people publish their pricing. Yeah, they publish their pricing. You look at Zoom, you look at all those kind of companies. It's clear they want to make sure people know what it costs. They make it accessible. It becomes transactional. But if you're looking to provide some kind of service offering or solution that is more what I call complex in its nature of delivery, the way that it impacts the business, and it's certainly not what we would call a commodity, something that's traded on the basis of price alone, then I have this to say about price. You can't possibly begin to talk about price until you understand, and this is qualification, you can't speak about price until you understand the need, how much they need it, how much it will impact their business. Because let me put it this way. Let's say my solution to your business is, to you, I don't know this, but let's say to you, it's the difference between going bankrupt and making $1 million. And with my simple offering that I don't know the value to you, it's going to transform you overnight and you're going to become instantly millionaires, right? And I say to you,
sounds sexy.
It sounds
sexy.
Yeah, absolutely. But if I don't know the value of it, when I offer you a price, I don't know whether that price is good, bad. If you tell me it's too expensive, it could be the best deal for you and you could still push your price down, because your job is to get the best price for your industry, your business, or your company. So I would say this: bring price up when it's appropriate. When you've established that you're talking to the right person, qualification number one. When you've established a need, because there's no point in telling you how much something is if you don't need it. It's a waste of conversation. So decision maker, need, time frame. Okay, then let's get into, is what I'm offering you exactly what you want? If there is any degree of customization or variation in my offering, which would mean that my offering to you could be A plus B or B plus C plus D, so different versions, and those different versions bring up a different price, then I can't give you numbers. Okay, so I would only offer you pricing once I've established need, decision maker, time frame, and you can sound out budget, and then we can talk about numbers. If they say no, we need to know that we're on the right ballpark, then you use price anchoring. You say, well, typically for customers that I've worked with in the past, like yourself, who work in this environment, our solution costs normally from say 50,000 to 30,000. And we always go from the higher to the lower. You know, we use that anchoring because the number you remember first is the higher number, even if you're going to sell at the lower number. So they always immediately get the perception of a discount if they secured it at the lower number. So if I said to you, it's 50,000 to 30,000, we go through the process and we decide that we're going to put the deal in front of you. And I put the pricing at say 39,000. And you say, well, when you gave us the pricing, you see between 50 and 30. My negotiation, I've got that much room to go down to, and that's still the price I wanted to sell at originally, and it's still potentially higher than what I would get. So you think you've got a great deal. it's about perception and the psychology that people want the lower number. So you frame it so that you shift the goalposts from day one, but don't start talking about price before you've qualified the need and the exact nature of what you're offering, because you can't price something that you can't articulate.
Oh, that is actually one more reason why do you need the qualification.
Precisely.
And it works for consulting businesses, service-based.
Everything. Except for, I mean, look, if you're selling widgets, boxes of widgets at $10, and the guy down the road is selling boxes of exactly the same widget for $9, transactional sale, it's, you know, you're talking about volume. You're talking about things that you're not adding value to. But if you're talking about complex software that materially improves an efficiency of a business, reduces the operating expenditure of a business, increases employee satisfaction and integration, anything that can be translated into a value benefit for the company in terms of money or operational performance. And this is one of the things that a lot of people fail to understand. When you talk about value, it's not the value that I perceive that you have is important. It's what you recognize. How does it make your business better? So what will my solution do for you? And when I understand how deeply my solution impacts your business, I know with more confidence I can hold my price point. Because when you come to say to me, well, you know, it seems a bit expensive, Taran, and we don't really need it. And I'll be like, really, Nelly? Because when we talked about this, you told me that you were going to go bankrupt, but this would make you a millionaire. So I think that my $100,000 price tag is a steal. So you get more confidence in your own position when you understand more deeply your client and their need. Yeah, it's intelligence gathering that gives you a stronger base to make a decision from.
My God, I could listen you all the day long, and probably even longer. That's really amazingly interesting, and you are so knowledgeable, Taran. I know that your time is money, and we should finish soon in a few minutes. So I also have to ask you the question about corporate sales, because sales to the corporate customers, because there are a lot of B2B startups who are building something for corporate sector, and I think we also discussed it during our meeting that they speak different language with corporate customers, and it is crazy difficult, even if they want to sell not for money but to sell the pilot to the corporate customer. It is crazy difficult. So do you have some advice on or some recommendations, some tips in your head how to sell to corporate customers?
Yeah, it is challenging actually, and the nature of corporate sales has evolved over the last 10 years at such a rate that it can be quite a daunting landscape to move into, especially when their corporate strategy for getting the best price is to separate decision makers from the users, so that you can't negotiate, you can't build a relationship up and leverage on that. What I'll say to your question though is this: if you understand how the value of your offering impacts their organization, and you focus on articulating that value in language that your client understands, you will get more traction. I know that sounds like a very unsexy answer, but it comes down to this. If I understand the problem so deeply and I can explain how much my solution impacts you, then you're going to listen to me. And I'll give you an example with a client I work with. I work with a company that built software. It's a SaaS product, and it was kind of like Facebook for the corporate world in order to create employee well-being. Yeah. So to keep everybody engaged this is in large organizations with thousands of 5,000 employees or more. And when the founder came to me, he was in the US, based in Barcelona. He said, look, this is my software package. It's really great. It's like, it really enhances employee well-being. It's a great one. I said, okay, who's your ideal client within the organization? And they said, oh, it's the HR director, because it's about employee engagement and well-being. And I went, yeah, but that's a really tough sale, because with the greatest of respect to HR professionals, they don't have a great deal of power. Yeah, they don't have the authority to make wider decision making. In the decision making tree, they tend to be further down. So I said, how does your solution benefit the company? How does it actually translate? And when we dug into this, and this is part of what I do with clients, I help them understand that you have to look at your solution in different ways in order to translate the value. What we discovered is this: but the reason why this software is potentially valuable is because it increases employee retention. And at the moment, globally, there is a problem with employee retention such that in 2018 to 2019, something between 21 and 28% of employees were leaving their jobs within the first 90 days. Now, if that wasn't terrible enough, because that was obviously a reflection of the failing of the corporate to create an environment that people want to be part of, the problem is that it costs that corporate probably around it's been calculated, it's not speculation, it's been calculated, $15,000 is invested in order to bring that person on to the point that they leave. Now, if you're per person, and if you're a corporate employing more than 50 or 100 people a year, and if you're an employer of thousands, and that's not an inconceivable number, you start doing the math. That's a terrifying number. And here's the really scary part that we uncovered. Because that cost is diffused across different departments, some of it's HR in terms of the recruitment fees, some of it's HR recruitment fees for the department, some of it's in training. That 15,000 is spread across a company and across 12 months because they don't always do their recruiting at the same time. You've realized that you've got a hidden drain of hundreds of thousands of dollars on your bottom line. Now, when you frame it that way, you realize it's not an HR question. It's a chief executive question. What are you going to do to stop your business losing $250,000 a year? And he said, I'm not. Let me show you how you are. And that gets people's attention. So when you frame it in a way that makes people go, excuse me, and you show them what they aren't aware of, or you show them the impact of what you do, you have so much more power to engage with them. I'm saying engage, I'm not saying sell, because the job is then to develop and deliver what you promised, what you've articulated. But remember, see how it's different from going to an HR person saying it's great for well-being and employee. Yeah, those things are nice, but corporations are run on profit. And if you want to get someone's attention and say, look, there's a drain on your profit of the tune of $250,000 a year. Now, if you want insights into corporate companies, guys, I would say do this. Go and look at, if they're publicly listed companies, go and look at their annual reports for the last couple of years. Inside each report, there'll be an executive statement from the chairman or the chief executive, yeah? And it will articulate their key metrics for the year, what it is they're going to be accomplishing, what they got done right, and what they didn't do. You will be able to use that in order to start anchoring conversation. Because when you reach out to the head of operations or the sales team or whoever, I read in your annual report that you're focusing on this area. My product absolutely is something you should be looking at because it drives that value. Do you think they're going to say not interested, or at least have a conversation maybe, or at least reply to your email? And listen, it's not all about just cold calling emails. There's a whole section to be spoken about in terms of engagement. But that's what I'd say. To answer your question, I'll be a bit longer than planned, but that's my answer.
That's amazing, fascinating, Taran. Bravo, because you also answered again unasked question, how actually you get this data about corporations, because it is not always available. This is great life hack, reading their annual reports. Actually, each big corporate has to issue annual report publicly. So, but there are a lot of pages, definitely. But
yeah, but you're only reading the chairman's statement. It's the executive. You don't need to read about the profit and loss of the business, but you want to know what the direction of the business is going in. Are they on track? Are they working towards an overarching objective? The chairman will, by his responsibility to shareholders, illustrate the company's progress, and he will summarize that in the statement.
Perfect. Taran, last question for today.
No problem.
I promise. Can you please tell maybe 3 major points, maybe more, how much you remind about when you are asked what is the major important, I don't know, tip, life hack, advice on building successful sales in a startup?
Well, you have to know what good looks like, and good is the good practice, good behavior, good process. So activity, what does good look like? You need to be able to measure what you do, because if you can't measure the parts, you can't decide where you need to improve. And you can even read articles I've written on Medium and LinkedIn on this exact topic. So activity should be documented. You should set targets for activity. If you're not selling, transacting, set targets on the people you're going to speak to. Set targets on the prospecting you're going to do. Whatever it is, measure it, because then you can then determine if that gives you enough of the results that you want. And focus on the right conversations with the right people. Qualify your ideal client or your ideal industry, because the more you understand that, the less time you waste on talking to the wrong people, and you waste their time and you waste your own. So what good looks like in terms of your activity, focus on who your ideal client is and identify the value you represent as best you can. And you've got a pretty good foundation from there. And of course, I could spend hours telling you this stuff, but those are the first three things that came to mind. So we'll leave it on those.
And I can spend hours listening to your stuff. And guys, this interview will be around 1 hour. If you are still with us, then it means that you feel the same as me, that you can listen and just take everything that Taran can say. At least on my side, this is not something about promo interviews, but I really want to get into his courses and his TCS. And if you feel the same, don't hesitate to go to the link, to click and to contact Taran to ask for his advice or to go into his program, either within the PitchSlap or within the TCS to focus on your sales. That's amazing. Sales is a beautiful process. Switch on your mind, build the proper understanding on what is it. Is it beautiful? You should be proud of selling and focus on this. Taran, thank you so much. I hope that we will see each other in a few weeks on the webinar where startup founders can ask you questions directly. But you are amazing. Guys, it was Taran Hughes, sales guru and super professional who can add incredible value to every person who is doing his business, and it means that who is obliged to sell. Thank you, Taran, a lot for your time and expertise.
Thank you very much for having me.